She found a shivering boy in the alley behind her diner and took him home, giving him warmth and safety without asking questions. What she didn't know, the child clinging to her was a mafia boss's son. And when his father finally found them, he saw something in her kindness that money couldn't buy. The February wind cut through Mara's thin jacket like a blade as she stepped out the back door of Eddie's diner. Her feet ached from the double shift, and her pockets held exactly $43 in tips, enough to cover half of next week's rent if she skipped lunch a few days. Another glamorous night in the life, she muttered, pulling her coat tighter. The alley behind the diner was her shortcut home, though calling it a shortcut was generous. It saved her maybe 2 minutes, but those 2 minutes meant 2 fewer minutes in the cold. She'd walked this path 1,000 times, past the same dumpsters, the same graffiti-tagged walls, the same broken streetlight that the city never bothered to fix. Tonight, something was different. A sound, small, barely audible over the wind, made her stop. A whimper, or maybe a cough. Mara froze, her hand instinctively clutching her keys between her fingers the way her mother had taught her. Chicago alleys weren't playgrounds, especially not at 11:30 on a Thursday night. "Hello." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Silence. Then another sound, definitely human, definitely young. She should keep walking. She should mind her own business. She should. Mara found herself moving toward the dumpster, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind the large green container, wedged between it and the brick wall, was a child. A boy, maybe 9 or 10 years old, curled into a ball with his knees pulled to his chest. He was shivering so violently that Mara could see it even in the dim light from the street. But it wasn't just the shivering that made her gasp. His clothes were expensive. Not department store expensive. Expensive. The kind of wool coat that cost more than her monthly salary, now dirty and torn at the sleeve. Designer sneakers, muddied but unmistakably high-end. And his face, streaked with tears and grime, held the kind of refinement that spoke of private schools and violin lessons. "Hey, sweetie," Mara said softly, crouching down despite every instinct screaming at her to call the police. "Are you okay?" The boy's head snapped up, his eyes wide with terror. They were striking eyes, dark and intelligent, with long lashes that any adult would envy. For a moment, Mara thought he might bolt. "I'm not going to hurt you," she continued, keeping her voice gentle.
"I'm Mara.
"I work at the diner right there. Are you lost?" The boy stared at her, his small chest heaving. Then, barely a whisper, "Please don't call them." "Call who, honey?" "Anyone," his voice cracked. "Please." Mara's mind raced. Runaway? Abuse? Kidnapping? The boy looked terrified, but not of her, of something else. Someone else. "How long have you been out here?" "I don't know."
Since
dark." Mara glanced at her watch. It was nearly midnight, and the temperature had dropped to 30 degrees. This child had been hiding in a freezing alley for hours. Every reasonable thought told her to call the police, to let professionals handle this. But something in those frightened eyes stopped her. She'd grown up in foster care, had seen what happened when the system got involved. Sometimes the cure was worse than the disease. "Okay," she said, making a decision that would change everything. "No calls. But you can't stay here. You'll freeze. I live 10 minutes away. You can warm up, get some food, and then we'll figure this out. Deal?" The boy studied her face, his expression far too serious for someone so young. Finally, he nodded. Mara helped him stand, and that's when she noticed his right hand clutched around something. As he moved, she caught a glimpse, a silver bracelet, small and delicate, with 2 letters engraved on it. L.R. "What's your name?" she asked as they started walking. The boy hesitated.
Lao.
"Well, Leo, I hope you like tomato soup, because that's about all I've got at home." The walk to her apartment was quiet except for Leo's occasional sniffles. Mara kept glancing at him, trying to piece together the puzzle. Rich kid, running from something, hiding in an alley instead of going to the police. None of it made sense. Her apartment was nothing special, a fifth-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. One bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, and a bathroom where the shower only worked if you jiggled the handle just right. But it was warm, and right now, that's all that mattered. "Sit," she instructed, pointing to her small couch. Leo obeyed immediately, his posture unnaturally perfect even in his exhausted state. Mara heated up the soup, found a clean blanket, and watched as Leo devoured the food like he hadn't eaten in days. His manners were impeccable. He waited for her to sit before eating, used his napkin properly, and thanked her 3 times. "Leo," she said carefully, "where are your parents?" His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Because you'd make me go back." "Is someone hurting you? Is that why you ran?" No, the answer came quickly, almost defensively. "No, it's not like that. It's just," he set down his spoon, his small hands trembling. "Everyone's always watching. Always telling me what to do, where to go, what to say. And my father, he's good, but everyone's afraid of him. Everyone treats him like—" Leo stopped abruptly, as if he'd said too much. Mara leaned forward. "Like what?" "Like he's dangerous." A chill ran down Mara's spine that had nothing to do with the weather outside. She looked at the boy, really looked at him. The expensive clothes. The formal manners. The bracelet that probably cost more than her car. The fear of being found. "Leo, what does your father do?" The boy met her eyes, and in that moment, he looked decades older than his years. "He protects people," Leo said quietly. "That's what he always says. But I don't think that's all he does." Before Mara could respond, her small television, left on from the morning, suddenly cut to a breaking news banner. She wouldn't have paid attention, except for the words that appeared on the screen. Breaking, 10-year-old son of prominent businessman Lorenzo Romano missing for over 24 hours. Family offering substantial reward for information. The photo that appeared made Mara's blood run cold. It was Leo. And the man standing behind him in the photo, with his hand protectively on the boy's shoulder, had eyes that Mara recognized from the newspapers. Eyes that had been photographed at charity galas and city council meetings. Eyes that belonged to a man whose business interests were the subject of much speculation and very little proof.
Lorenzo Romano.
Philanthropist. Real estate mogul. Suspected head of the most powerful organized crime family in Chicago. Mara looked at the child on her couch, then back at the television, then back at Leo. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh no." Leo's eyes filled with tears. "Are you going to send me back?" And Mara, who had always tried to do the right thing, who had never broken a law more serious than jaywalking, found herself looking at this frightened child and saying words that would pull her into a world she didn't understand. "Not yet. Not until you're ready." She didn't know it then, but in that moment, she'd just made herself the most important person in the most dangerous man in Chicago's life. Morning sunlight streamed through Mara's thin curtains, and for a confused moment, she thought last night had been a dream. Then she heard the sound of running water from the bathroom and remembered she had the son of Lorenzo Romano sleeping on her couch. She'd barely slept, lying awake replaying the news broadcast in her mind. Prominent businessman. That's what they called him. But everyone in Chicago knew the truth, or at least the rumors. The Romano family had roots that went back generations, connections that reached into every corner of the city. People whispered about them in restaurants, speculated about them on forums, but nobody ever said anything concrete. Nobody who valued their safety anyway. And she had his son eating breakfast at her kitchen table. Leo emerged from the bathroom, his hair damp, wearing one of Mara's oversized t-shirts that hung on him like a dress. Despite the ridiculous outfit, he maintained that same careful posture, that unnatural composure. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "I use the shower. I try not to use too much hot water." What 10-year-old worried about hot water usage? "It's fine," Mara said, pouring him orange juice. "Leo, we need to talk about last night." About what I saw on TV. His hand froze, reaching for the glass. What did it say? That your father is looking for you. That he's
Lorenzo Romano.
Leo's face went carefully blank, another expression too practiced for a child. Did it say anything else? That he's offering a reward. How much? The question caught her off guard. Does it matter? It matters to know who might be looking. Leo took a small sip of juice, his movements deliberate. My father has enemies. If they know I'm missing, they'll try to find me first. Use me. Mara sat down hard on the opposite chair. Leo, what kind of life do you have? For the first time since she'd found him, Leo's composure cracked. His eyes grew wet, and his voice came out small and broken. The kind where I can't just be a kid. Where my chess tutor carries a gun. Where I have to check under my car before my driver starts it, even though I'm only 10. Where people smile at my father, but I can see them shaking. But does he hurt people? Your father? No, the answer was immediate and firm. Papa says violence is what weak men do when they run out of words. He says real power is making people want to cooperate, not forcing them. Then why did you run? Leo stared into his orange juice. Because I wanted one day, just one day, where someone talked to me like I was normal. Where I could walk somewhere without 3 men following me. Where I could have a friend who liked me for me, not because their parents needed a favor from my father. Mara's heart broke a little. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I understand, she said. More than you know. They sat in silence for a moment before Leo asked, What will you do? Turn me in for the reward? How much is it? Probably $1 million. Mara choked on her coffee. $1 million. My father doesn't do anything halfway. $1 million. Mara could pay off her debts, move out of this apartment, maybe even go back to school like she'd always dreamed. Her mother's medical bills from before she passed, she could finally settle those. She could have a life. She looked at Leo's face, at the hope and fear warring in his expression, and felt something shift in her chest. Well, she said slowly, I suppose we should figure out what to do with you today. Do you like pancakes? The relief that flooded Leo's face was almost painful to witness. Really? Really? But Leo, you need to understand. I can't keep you here forever. Your father must be worried sick. He's probably worried, yes. But sick. Leo shook his head. Papa doesn't get sick.
He gets focused.
Right now, every person who works for him is looking for me. Every camera is being checked. Every street is being searched. He won't stop until he finds me. That sounds like he loves you.
He does.
But sometimes love looks like a cage when it's covered in gold bars. Mara started making pancakes, and as she cooked, she watched Leo relax incrementally. He asked questions about her life, about working at the diner, about what she did for fun. His curiosity seemed genuine, hungry even. Don't you have friends? She asked. At school? I have classmates. That's different, he picked at his pancake. There's this boy, Marcus. He invited me to his birthday party once. Papa sent our security team to check out his house first, his parents, his whole family. After that, Marcus stopped talking to me. That must be lonely. It's safe, Leo corrected. That's what matters in my world. Safety. The television, still on from earlier, cut to the noon news. The anchor's face was serious. The search intensifies for 10-year-old Leonardo Romano. His father, businessman Lorenzo Romano, made a brief statement this morning. The screen cut to a press conference. Lorenzo Romano stood at a podium, flanked by men in dark suits. He was younger than Mara expected, maybe 40, with silver threading through his dark hair. His face was composed, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. Exhaustion.
Fear.
Desperation. My son is everything to me, Lorenzo said, his voice steady but strained. To whoever has information, I ask only for his safe return. No questions.
No consequences.
Just bring him home. Then he added something that made Mara's blood run cold. To those who would harm him, understand that my restraint has limits. Find him.
Now.
The broadcast cut back to the anchor, but Mara was frozen, staring at the screen. Leo's voice was soft beside her. He's really scared. I've never seen him like that in public. Leo, Mara said carefully, what happens if I call the police right now? What would your father do? The boy thought for a long moment. He'd thank you. Probably give you the reward. Make sure you were protected. And what about the people who work for him? The ones looking for you? Leo's face darkened. Some of them aren't looking because they love me. They're looking because failing my father isn't an option. And not everyone who works for Papa agrees with his rules about violence. Mara realized then that she wasn't just protecting Leo from whatever he was running from. She might be protecting herself from becoming a target the moment she made that call. Her phone rang, making them both jump. It was Eddie from the diner. Mara, some men were here asking about you this morning. Guys in suits. Said they were looking for a missing kid, asking if we'd seen anything unusual last night. Mara's mouth went dry. What did you tell them? Nothing, because I don't know nothing. But Mara? They didn't look like cops. They looked like something else. You okay?
I'm fine, Eddie.
Thanks. She hung up and looked at Leo, who had gone pale. They're already looking for connections, he said quietly. Papa's people work fast. They'll find me eventually. They always do. Then what do we do until then? Leo met her eyes, and for the first time, he smiled. A real, genuine, childlike smile. Can we feed the stray cats you mentioned? And maybe play chess? I promise I won't tell you how Papa's rook strategy relates to territorial control. Despite everything, Mara laughed.
Deal.
But Leo, whatever happens, I need you to promise me something. What? When the time comes, and it will come, you'll talk to your father. Really talk to him. Tell him how you feel. Leo nodded slowly. Okay, I promise. As they cleaned up breakfast, Mara caught her reflection in the window and barely recognized herself. 24 hours ago, she was just a waitress trying to make rent. Now she was harboring the son of the most powerful man in Chicago, with $1 million bounty on his head and dangerous men searching the streets. She should be terrified. Instead, watching Leo actually act like a child for the first time, laughing at her terrible juggling attempt with oranges, she felt something else entirely. She felt needed. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth the risk. Lorenzo Romano stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, watching the city wake up below. From 40 stories high, Chicago looked orderly, peaceful, a grid of streets and buildings bathed in morning light. He knew better. Somewhere in that vast sprawl was a son, alone and frightened, and Lorenzo couldn't do a damn thing about it without making everything worse. Boss, we've checked every hospital, every shelter, every place a kid might go. Vincent Caruso, his oldest friend and second in command, stood behind him, exhaustion evident in his voice. It's like he vanished into thin air. 10-year-old boys don't vanish, Lorenzo said quietly. Someone has him, or someone saw him. We're just not looking in the right places. We could expand the search. Put more pressure on. No, Lorenzo turned, and Vincent instinctively stepped back. Not from fear, but from the intensity in his boss's eyes. No pressure.
No threats.
No breaking down doors. We do this clean. With all due respect, if this were anyone else's kid, it's not anyone else's kid. It's mine. And I won't burn this city down looking for him. That's exactly what Leo would hate me for. Lorenzo moved to his desk, where a single photograph sat. Leo at his 10th birthday party, trying hard to smile for the camera, but not quite succeeding. He ran because of what we are, Vincent. Because people are afraid of us. If we prove him right, he'll never come home. Not really. Vincent exchanged a glance with Marco and Tony, the other two men in the room. They'd all served Lorenzo for over a decade, had seen him navigate impossible situations with a clear head and steady hand. But this was different. This was personal. The family's getting restless, Marco said carefully. Word's spreading that your son ran away. Some of the younger guys, they're seeing it as Weakness, Lorenzo finished the sentence. Let them. Boss, Vito Morelli's already making noise. Says if you can't protect your own son, maybe you can't protect the territory. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Vito Morelli, ambitious, ruthless, and smart enough to be dangerous. He'd been pushing for more aggressive expansion, wanted to go back to the old ways of doing business. The ways Lorenzo had spent 15 years moving away from. Vito forgets that I didn't build this organization by being the loudest or the most violent, Lorenzo said. I built it by being the smartest. And right now, the smart thing is to find my son without collateral damage. And if Vito makes a move while you're distracted? Lorenzo's expression went cold. Then Vito will learn why everyone else is smart enough not to. His phone buzzed, a text from his assistant. The mayor wanted a meeting. So did the police commissioner. And there were 17 messages from various business associates, offering help that Lorenzo knew came with strings attached. He ignored them all and pulled up the footage from Leo's school again, watching for the 100th time as his son slipped away from his security detail during a field trip. Leo had been planning this, the way he timed it, using the crowd of students as cover. His son had inherited his strategic mind, for better or worse. Pull up the traffic cameras from the museum district again, Lorenzo ordered. And get me a list of every business within a 5-block radius of where we lost him. Someone saw something. Tony hesitated. We already checked those, boss. Nothing. Then check again. Different eyes this time. And Tony, when you talk to people, I want you smiling. Polite. We're a worried father's friends, not enforcers. Understand? Yes, boss. As the men left to execute his orders, Vincent lingered. Lorenzo, can I speak freely? You always do. Your father wouldn't have handled it this way. He'd have had every snitch in the city shaken down by now, every favor called in. People would be too scared not to help. Lorenzo poured himself a whiskey, despite the early hour. My father died at 53 with more enemies than friends, Vincent. Is that the legacy you think I should follow? Your father also never lost control of his family. No, he just lost his soul instead. Lorenzo took a slow sip. Do you know what Leo asked me last month? He asked if I was a bad man. Not a criminal, not dangerous, a bad man. And I couldn't answer him. Because how do I explain that the world isn't that simple? That sometimes you do questionable things for good reasons. You're nothing like the old bosses, Lorenzo. You've kept the peace, protected legitimate businesses, kept drugs out of our neighborhoods. But I'm still a man who people fear. A man who controls territory and collects debts and makes problems disappear. Lorenzo stared into his glass. Leo sees all of that. He sees how people look at me, how they look at him. And he hates it. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand. He understands perfectly. That's the problem. Lorenzo set down his glass. When I was his age, I thought my father was a king. It wasn't until I was older that I realized he was a warlord. Leo's smarter than I was. He already knows what I am. Vincent sat down across from him. So, what's the play here? We find him. Then what? Then I do what I should have done a year ago. I start preparing an exit. Not from the life entirely. That's impossible. But from the front lines. Let the next generation take over while I'm still young enough to be a real father. The families won't accept that.
You're the reason there's been peace.
You're the one everyone respects. Or fears, Lorenzo corrected. There's a difference, even if the result looks the same. A knock at the door interrupted them. Giovanni, one of the younger associates, entered looking excited. Boss, we might have something. A waitress at a diner near where we lost the trail. She finished her shift around the time Leo would have been in the area. Eddie's Diner on Ashland. Lorenzo was on his feet immediately. Name? Mara Jensen. 28. Works double shifts, lives alone in Pilsen. No criminal record. No connections to any families. Bring her in for questioning. Already sent guys this morning. She wasn't there, called in sick. First time she's missed a shift in 2 years. Lorenzo's instincts prickled. That's not a coincidence. Want us to pick her up? No, Lorenzo grabbed his coat. I'll talk to her myself. Boss, that's not protocol. Let us handle the groundwork. Vincent, my son has been missing for 36 hours. Protocol went out the window the moment he did. Lorenzo headed for the elevator. Get me her address.
And Vincent?
We go in quiet. 2 cars, no guns visible, and everyone smiles. If this woman has my son, the last thing I want is to scare her into doing something stupid. As the elevator descended, Lorenzo caught his reflection in the polished doors. He looked older than he had 2 days ago, the lines around his eyes deeper. Leo was out there somewhere, possibly scared, possibly in danger, and every instinct Lorenzo had screamed at him to tear the city apart until he found him. But he knew his son, knew that Leo was testing him, watching to see what kind of man his father really was. Would Lorenzo be the measured, principled man he claimed to be? Or would he become the monster everyone expected? His phone buzzed again. Vito Morelli, requesting a meeting to discuss the situation. Lorenzo deleted the message. Vito could wait. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage, where Vincent waited with the cars. Let's go find my son, Lorenzo said. And pray this waitress is smarter than she is scared. Because if Mara Jensen had taken Leo, she was either the bravest woman in Chicago or the most foolish. And Lorenzo Romano, for all his power and influence, found himself hoping desperately that it was the former. He needed someone brave right now. Someone who'd done the right thing for the right reasons. He needed hope that the world wasn't as cynical as he'd become. 3 days had passed, and Mara's small apartment had transformed into something that felt almost like a home. She'd called in sick at the diner, something she never did, claiming a stomach bug. Eddie had been understanding, but she could hear the suspicion in his voice. People in her neighborhood didn't take sick days unless they were actually dying. Leo sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by her old art supplies, colored pencils she'd bought years ago with dreams of taking a design class. He was sketching the view from her window with surprising skill, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. Where'd you learn to draw like that? Mara asked, folding laundry on the couch. My mother. Leo's hand paused for just a moment. Before she died. She was a painter. Papa kept all her work, says I have her eye for color.
I'm sorry.
About your mom. It was 4 years ago. Cancer, he added, shading to a building. Papa changed after that. Got more protective, more strict about security. That's when the guards started following me everywhere. Mara watched him work, marveling at how different he seemed from the terrified child she'd found in the alley. Here, in her cramped apartment with its peeling paint and noisy pipes, Leo was just a 10-year-old kid. He laughed at her terrible jokes, helped her cook meals, and had taught her 3 different chess strategies, each explained with the patience of someone twice his age. You're really good at chess, she'd said last night after he'd beaten her for the 5th time.
Papa taught me.
He says chess is like life. You have to think 3 moves ahead, protect what matters, and know when to sacrifice a piece to win the game. Then Leo had looked sad. I think maybe I'm the piece he's afraid to sacrifice. Now, watching him draw, Mara felt a fierce protectiveness that surprised her. In 3 days, this child had become more than a responsibility. He'd become the little brother she'd never had. Hey, she said suddenly, want to go feed the stray cats? There's a colony behind the bodega on the corner. Leo's face lit up. Really? Can we?
Sure.
But you need to wear my old baseball cap and keep your head down. Deal?
Deal.
20 minutes later, they were crouched in the alley behind Martinez's bodega, surrounded by 6 cats of various sizes and colors. Leo had insisted on buying the expensive cat food with the money from his pocket, money that Mara realized was probably more than she made in a week. This one's Duchess, Mara said, pointing to a gray tabby with one torn ear. She's the queen of this colony. And that orange guy? That's Cheeto. He's friendly but dumb as a brick. Leo laughed, a real, genuine belly laugh that made Mara's heart squeeze. He let Cheeto climb into his lap, stroking the cat's fur with gentle hands. Do you do this a lot? He asked. Every few days. I know it's stupid. They're just strays, but everyone deserves to eat, you know? It's not stupid. Leo looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. Papa always says the measure of a person is how they treat those who can't do anything for them. These cats can't pay you or thank you, but you help them anyway. Your dad sounds pretty wise.
He is.
He's just Leo struggled for the words. He's so busy being strong for everyone else that sometimes I don't think he knows how to just be my dad. Like, I've never seen him cry. Not even at Mama's funeral. He just stood there like a statue while everyone else fell apart. Maybe he cries when no one's looking, Mara suggested gently. Maybe. But I wish he'd let me see it. Let me know he's human, not just Boss Romano, the man who controls half of Chicago. A woman's voice startled them both. Mara? That you? Mrs. Chen from 3B rounded the corner, carrying groceries. Her eyes landed on Leo, and Mara saw the moment of recognition, not of who he was, but that he was there. Yes, Mrs. Chen. Just feeding the cats. And who's this? The elderly woman smiled at Leo. Your nephew? Mara's mind raced.
Yes.
He's visiting from Detroit. For a few days. How nice. You're a good boy, helping with the cats. Mrs. Chen patted Leo's head before continuing inside. Once she was gone, Leo whispered, Detroit. First thing that came to mind. It's okay. I've never been to Detroit. What's it like?
No idea.
I've never been either. They both burst into laughter, and for a moment, the absurdity of their situation felt almost normal. Walking back to the apartment, Leo suddenly grabbed Mara's hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it made her throat tight with emotion. When was the last time someone had held her hand? When was the last time she'd mattered this much to anyone? Mara? Leo's voice was quiet. Can I ask you something? Sure, kid. Why did you help me? You could have called the police that first night. Could have gotten a reward. But you didn't.
Why?
Mara stopped walking, crouching down to his eye level. You want the honest answer? He nodded. Because I saw myself in that alley. Not the rich clothes or the famous father, but the look in your eyes. Like you were drowning and everyone else was just walking past. I've been there, Leo. Growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes where people only wanted the check, not the kid. I swore, if I ever had the chance to be the person I needed when I was young, I'd take it. Leo's eyes filled with tears. I'm glad it was you who found me. Me too, kiddo. Me too. They were almost back to her building when Mara noticed them. 2 black cars parked across the street. They'd been there yesterday too, she realized. Same cars, same position like they were watching. Her blood went cold. Leo, she said carefully, not looking at the cars. When we get inside, I want you to pack your things. We might need to leave quickly. They found us. Maybe. I don't know. But we should be ready. Leo's hand tightened in hers. I don't want to go back. Not yet. Please. I know, sweetie. But we might not have a choice. They climbed the stairs to her apartment, and Mara's hands shook as she unlocked the door. Inside, everything looked normal, untouched. But that didn't mean anything. She went to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain, and looked down at the street. One of the car doors opened, and a man stepped out, tall, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car. He looked up at her building, and even from 5 floors up, Mara could see the intensity in his posture. He wasn't alone. 3 more men emerged from the vehicles, all of them dressed similarly, all of them moving with the careful precision of people trained to handle trouble. Mara? Leo's voice was small behind her. Is that them? She didn't have to ask who he meant. I think so. What do we do? Mara looked at the boy who'd become so important to her in such a short time, then back at the men on the street. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to grab Leo and escape through the back entrance, to disappear. But where would they go? How long could a broke waitress hide from men with infinite resources? And more importantly, was she really helping Leo by keeping him from his father? Or was she just teaching him that running solved problems? We wait, she said finally, and we see what they want. And if they want to take me? Mara pulled him close, wrapping her arms around his small shoulders. Then they'll have to go through me first. And I might not be rich or powerful, but I'm pretty stubborn when I want to be. Leo hugged her back, his face pressed against her shoulder. Thank you for being brave for me. Right back at you, kid. Below, the men were entering her building. Mara could hear the heavy door open, could imagine them starting up the stairs. Her heart hammered against her ribs. In minutes, maybe seconds, her door would knock. And everything would change. The knock came exactly 3 minutes later, firm but not aggressive. Professional. Mara positioned herself in front of Leo, who stood frozen in the middle of her small living room. Stay behind me, she whispered. Ms. Jensen. The voice through the door was calm, almost gentle. My name is Vincent Caruso. I'm here with Lorenzo Romano. We'd like to speak with you. Just to talk, nothing more. Mara's mouth went dry. Lorenzo Romano himself was at her door. We know you're home, Ms. Jensen, the voice continued. And we know you're scared. But I give you my word, no one here wants to hurt you. We just want to talk about Leo. Behind her, she felt Leo's small hand grip the back of her shirt. What do I do? She whispered over her shoulder. Open it, Leo said quietly. Papa doesn't break his word. If Mr. Vincent says it's just a talk, it is. Taking a shaky breath, Mara unlocked the door and opened it slowly. 4 men stood in the hallway, but her eyes went immediately to the one in the center. Lorenzo Romano looked different from his photographs, more human, somehow. His expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his face, the worry lines around his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. When his gaze moved past her and found Leo, his entire body seemed to sag with relief. Leonardo, his voice cracked on the name. Papa, Leo stepped out from behind Mara, his chin up, trying to be brave. For a moment, the powerful crime boss everyone feared simply looked like a father who'd found his lost child. Lorenzo moved forward, but Vincent caught his arm, gesturing toward Mara. Lorenzo stopped, and when he spoke again, his voice was controlled. Ms. Jensen, may we come in? Do I have a choice? The words came out sharper than Mara intended. Yes, Lorenzo met her eyes, and she was struck by the sincerity there. You always have a choice. Though I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and my son, together. Mara stepped aside, and the 4 men entered her tiny apartment. They seemed to fill every available space, their presence transforming her home into something smaller, more fragile. Lorenzo crouched down to Leo's level, his hands trembling slightly as he checked his son for injuries. Are you hurt? Did anyone?
Ai fine, Papa.
Mara took care of me, Leo glanced at her. She found me in the alley. I was freezing. She gave me food and a place to stay, and didn't ask for anything. Lorenzo stood slowly, turning to face Mara. You've had my son for 3 days. I didn't kidnap him, Mara said quickly. He was hiding. He was scared. I couldn't leave him there. And you didn't call the police. Or claim the reward. He asked me not to. $1 million, Ms. Jensen. That's a life-changing amount of money for someone in your situation. Mara felt her face flush with anger. My situation? You mean being poor? Yeah, I know I'm poor. But I'm not someone who trades kids for cash. To her surprise, Lorenzo's expression softened. That's not what I meant. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. He gestured to her worn couch. May I sit? The surreal politeness of it all made Mara want to laugh hysterically.
Sure.
Make yourself at home. Lorenzo sat, and Leo immediately moved to his side, not cowering, but seeking comfort. Lorenzo wrapped an arm around his son, and Mara saw his hand shake as he pulled the boy close. Can you tell me what happened? Lorenzo asked. Why you ran? Leo stared at his shoes. I was at the museum with school. Everyone was looking at the art, but all I could think about was how Joey and Marcus were whispering about you. About what you do. About whether I'm dangerous, too. What did they say? That their parents told them to stay away from me. That your business means people get hurt. Leo's voice got smaller. Is that true, Papa? Do people get hurt because of what you do? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes.
Yes.
Though I work very hard to make sure they don't.
See?
That's what I mean. Leo pulled away, tears streaming down his face. Everyone's scared of you. Even your friends, I see how they act around you. Like one wrong word, and they're in trouble. And I'm just the son of the scary man. That's all I'll ever be.
Leo.
I wanted one day where someone looked at me and just saw me. Not your son, not a Romano, just Leo. And Mara did that. He pointed at her. She didn't know who I was, and she still helped. She didn't want money or favors or protection. She just wanted to make sure I was okay. Lorenzo looked at Mara, really looked at her, and she saw something shift in his expression. Is this true? I didn't know who he was when I found him, Mara said. Not until I saw the news. And by then she trailed off, not sure how to explain. By then you'd already cared, Lorenzo finished quietly. You'd already made him a promise. He's a kid. A scared kid who needed help. That's all that mattered. Vincent cleared his throat. Boss, we should go. Get Leo home. Make sure he's checked by the doctor. In a minute, Lorenzo never took his eyes off Mara. Ms. Jensen, I need to understand something. You kept my son hidden for 3 days. Knowing who I am, knowing I had the entire city looking for him. Either you're the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Which is it? Mara crossed her arms. Maybe I'm just someone who thinks a 10-year-old's feelings matter more than some crime boss's pride. The room went silent. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket, but Lorenzo held up a hand, stopping him. Then, incredibly, Lorenzo laughed, a short, surprised sound. Fair enough, he stood, his hand still on Leo's shoulder. My son is right. You saw him as just a child. That's rare in my world. And valuable. I don't want your money. I know. But you'll have it anyway, not as payment, but as thanks. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is $5,000. Enough to cover your lost wages and expenses, nothing more. I'm not trying to buy your silence or your loyalty. I'm simply thanking you for keeping my son safe when you had no reason to. Mara stared at the envelope. $5,000. That was 3 months of rent, or her car repairs, or... She pushed it back toward him. I told you. I didn't do it for money. Lorenzo looked at the envelope, then at her, then at his son's face, and something changed in his expression. He slowly put the envelope back in his jacket. Then will you accept my thanks without it? That I can do. Lorenzo extended his hand, and Mara shook it. His grip was firm but not aggressive, his palm calloused despite his expensive suit. Come on, Leonardo, Lorenzo said gently. Let's go home. Leo's face crumpled. Can I say goodbye? Of course. The boy threw himself at Mara, wrapping his arms around her waist. She hugged him back, feeling tears sting her own eyes. Thank you for showing me what kindness looks like, Leo whispered. I won't forget. You take care of yourself, okay? And maybe talk to your dad. Really talk to him. He looks like he wants to listen. Leo nodded against her shoulder, then pulled back. He took his father's hand, and together they moved toward the door. Lorenzo paused at the threshold, looking back. Ms. Jensen? If you ever need anything at all, you call this number. He placed a business card on her entry table. Day or night. No strings attached. Why would you do that? Because you gave me back what matters most. And because he glanced at Leo. Because my son trusts you. In my experience, children are excellent judges of character. Then they were gone, the apartment suddenly feeling enormous and empty in their absence. Mara locked the door behind them and slid down it, sitting on the floor as the reality of the last 3 days crashed over her. She'd harbored the son of Chicago's most powerful crime boss. She'd refused his money. She'd told him off to his face. And somehow, she was still alive. Her phone buzzed, a text from Eddie. You coming back to work tomorrow? Those guys came back asking about you again. Mara stared at the message, then at the business card Lorenzo had left. Simple, elegant. Lorenzo Romano with a phone number. Nothing else. She should throw it away. Should forget this ever happened. Should go back to her normal, quiet life. Instead, she tucked the card carefully into her wallet. Something told her she'd need it sooner than she thought. The Romano estate sat behind iron gates in Lincoln Park, a sprawling mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. Lorenzo led Leo through the front entrance, past staff members whose relief was evident on their faces. The housekeeper, Mrs. Patricia, actually cried when she saw Leo. "Thank God," she whispered, making the sign of the cross. "Thank God you're safe." Leo hugged her, then allowed himself to be swept away for a medical checkup while Lorenzo retreated to his study. Vincent followed, closing the door behind them. "That was interesting," Vincent said carefully. "The waitress." Mara Jensen. Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "What do we know about her?" "Foster kid. Aged out of the system at 18. Works 2 jobs, waitress and weekend cleaning at a gym. No family, no significant debts except medical bills from her late mother, who wasn't actually her mother but a foster parent who took her in at 16-inch." Vincent consulted his phone. "By all accounts, she's exactly what she appears to be, a woman trying to survive who did a decent thing." Lorenzo swirled his whiskey, thinking about the way Mara had stood between him and Leo, chin up despite being terrified. The way she'd refused his money without hesitation. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had an angle. Except, apparently, Mara Jensen. "Send her 20,000, Lorenzo said suddenly. "Boss, she refused the 5. Which is why we send more. As a gift, not payment. Have it delivered with a note thanking her for her kindness. Make it clear there are no strings, no expectations." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "You realize she'll probably return that too?" "Probably. But Leo's right. She showed him genuine kindness. That's worth acknowledging, whether she accepts it or not." An hour later, Leo appeared in the study doorway, fresh from his medical check and wearing clean clothes. He looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable than he had in Mara's apartment.
"Papa?
Can we talk?" Lorenzo gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Of course. But first, I need you to understand something." He came around the desk, pulling a chair close to his son's. "What you did was dangerous. Not just for you, but for everyone who cares about you. Do you understand that?" "Yes." "Do you understand that there are people, bad people, who would have used you to hurt me?" "Yes." "Then help me understand why you did it anyway." Leo's face twisted with emotion. "Because I'm suffocating, Papa. Everyone watches me all the time. I can't make friends because you have them investigated. I can't go anywhere without guards. I can't even fail a test without someone reporting it to you." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "When does it stop? When do I get to just be a kid?" Lorenzo felt each word like a physical blow. "I'm trying to keep you safe. I know. But Mama used to say that a life lived in fear isn't really living. Don't you remember?" Lorenzo closed his eyes. Yes, he remembered. Sophia had said those exact words, usually while trying to convince him to let Leo do something normal, ride a bike, go to a friend's house, join the school soccer team. And every time, Lorenzo had found a reason to say no, always dressed up as concern for safety. "Your mother was braver than I am," Lorenzo said quietly. "She wasn't afraid of the world the way I am." "You're not afraid of anything. I'm terrified of losing you." Every single day, Lorenzo took his son's hands. "When your mother died, something broke in me. I couldn't protect her from the cancer, couldn't fix it, couldn't control it. So I tried to control everything else, especially your safety. But I see now that I've been building a prison instead of a home." "I don't need a prison, Papa. I just need a father." The words hung in the air between them. Lorenzo pulled his son into a tight embrace, feeling the boy's tears soak into his shirt.
I'm sorry, Lorenzo whispered.
I'm so sorry. I've been so focused on keeping you alive that I forgot to let you live. They sat like that for a long time, neither speaking, just holding each other. Finally, Leo pulled back. Mara made me feel normal. Like I mattered because of who I am, not who you are. Can I see her again? Lorenzo hesitated, every protective instinct screaming no. But he thought about Mara's apartment, about the way Leo had laughed while feeding stray cats, about the sketch he'd drawn with such care. Let me think about it, he said. But Leo? No more running. If you need space, if you need to talk, if you need anything, you come to me first. Deal?
Deal.
The next morning, Lorenzo sent Vincent to deliver the envelope to Mara, $20,000 with a simple note, for showing my son what kindness looks like.
No strings. No expectations.
Just gratitude.
LR.
Vincent returned 3 hours later with the envelope unopened. She wouldn't take it? Lorenzo asked. She took it, opened it, counted the money, then handed it right back. Vincent couldn't quite hide his smile. Said, and I quote, "Tell Mr. Romano, I didn't ask for a down payment on a house. I asked for nothing. The answer's still nothing." Lorenzo stared at Vincent. She actually said that. Word for word. Then she wrote her own note and sealed the envelope. Vincent handed it over. Lorenzo opened it, finding his cash and a piece of diner receipt paper with handwriting that slanted slightly to the left. "Mr. Romano, I don't want your money. I wanted Leo to feel safe for a few days. Mission accomplished. If you want to thank me, just be the father he needs. That's payment enough." Also, he mentioned he likes painting. His mother's gift, he said. Maybe let him pursue it? Just a thought from a waitress who knows nothing about raising kids.
Mara.
Lorenzo read the note 3 times, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. When was the last time someone had spoken to him this directly? This honestly? Even Vincent, his oldest friend, measured his words carefully. But this waitress, this woman with nothing to lose and everything to fear, had looked at the most powerful man in Chicago and essentially told him to be a better father. "She's either fearless or foolish," Vincent said. "No," Lorenzo said slowly.
"She's honest."
And that's rarer than either. He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "Richard? I need you to find out who holds the medical debt for a woman named Mara Jensen. Former foster child, late 20s. Yes, I'll wait." 5 minutes later, he had the information. Mara owed $17,000 to 3 different collection agencies for her foster mother's cancer treatment for a woman who'd taken her in when no one else would. "Pay them off," Lorenzo instructed. "All of them. Anonymously. She can't refuse what she doesn't know about." "Boss," Vincent said carefully, "why are you doing this?" Lorenzo looked at his son's drawing, still sitting on his desk, the view from Mara's window, rendered with careful detail and surprising emotion. "Because she gave me back my son. Because she did it without wanting anything in return. And because," he paused, thinking about Leo's words, "because she reminded me what honor actually looks like." 2 weeks later, Mara received a letter from a collection agency informing her that her debt had been satisfied by an anonymous benefactor. She stood in her apartment, reading the letter 3 times, her hands shaking. She knew exactly who the anonymous benefactor was. She pulled out Lorenzo's business card, staring at the number. Part of her wanted to call and yell at him for interfering. Another part wanted to thank him. A larger part just wanted to cry with relief. In the end, she did none of those things. Instead, she tucked the letter away and went to work. But she kept the business card. And sometimes, late at night, she wondered about the boy with the sad eyes and his father who was learning, slowly, painfully, how to love without suffocating. She wondered if they were okay. She wondered if she'd ever see them again. And deep down, in a part of herself she didn't want to examine too closely, she hoped the answer was yes. Vito Morelli stood in a warehouse on the edge of the shipping district, watching his men unload crates that officially contained furniture components. Unofficially, they contained weapons, enough to arm a small militia. "Boss, you sure about this?" his lieutenant, Frank Russo, asked nervously. "Romano's been clear about keeping military-grade stuff out of the city." "Romano's been clear about a lot of things," Vito said, lighting a cigar. "But while he's been playing house with his kid and getting soft, the rest of us have been losing opportunities. The Colombians want to expand their territory. The Russians are pushing into Bridgeport. And what does our great Don do? He negotiates. He compromises. He keeps the peace. He keeps us weak." Vito turned to face Frank. "My grandfather didn't build this organization by being reasonable. He built it by being feared. Lorenzo's forgotten that. And now his own son runs away from him? That's not leadership, that's weakness." Frank shifted uncomfortably. "Word is the kid's back. Safe and sound. Thanks to some nobody waitress, not Lorenzo's network." Vito puffed his cigar. 3 days, Frank. The Don's son was missing for 3 days, and he didn't tear this city apart looking. Didn't put pressure on anyone. Just asked politely and waited. He laughed bitterly. "My father would have had every snitch on their knees within hours. Different times, boss."
Exactly.
"And maybe it's time we reminded people what real power looks like." Vito had been patient for years, waiting for Lorenzo to make a mistake big enough to justify a challenge. The old guard respected Lorenzo too much, feared his intelligence and his connections. But the younger members? They were hungry. They wanted action, wanted to expand, wanted to prove themselves. And Lorenzo's handling of his son's disappearance had given Vito exactly the opening he needed. "Set up a meeting with the Castellano crew and the Russians," Vito ordered. "Tell them we're discussing new territorial arrangements. Tell them the Don's policies are evolving. You're making a move against him? Not against him. Around him. If Lorenzo wants to play the philosopher king, fine. But the rest of us still have business to conduct." What Vito didn't say, what he was carefully planning, was something more direct. Something that would prove once and for all that Lorenzo Romano had gone soft. He was going to take the boy again. But this time, it wouldn't be about ransom or negotiation. It would be about sending a message. Lorenzo couldn't even protect his own family. How could he protect the organization? 2 weeks after Leo's return, Lorenzo was in his study reviewing legitimate business reports when Vincent burst in without knocking. "We have a problem." Lorenzo looked up sharply. Vincent never interrupted without cause. "What kind of problem?" "Vito's moving. He met with the Castellanos last night, and we have sources saying he's been in contact with the Russian crew. He's building a coalition." "To do what?" "To challenge you. He's been spreading the word that you're not fit to lead, that you've gone soft." Vincent dropped a folder on the desk. "And he's got support. More than I'd like." Lorenzo flipped through the folder, surveillance photos, transcribed conversations, financial records. Vito had been busy and careful. Most of this skirted the line of outright betrayal without crossing it. How many families are listening? For that we know of. Maybe more. And our people? Loyal, but nervous. They want to know you're still strong enough to handle this. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair. This was the moment he'd known would come eventually. The moment when his restraint, his principles, his refusal to rule through fear would be tested. Call a meeting. All the families. Make it clear attendance is mandatory. When? 3 days. That gives Vito time to think he's winning. Lorenzo's eyes hardened. And time for us to prepare a proper response. Vincent nodded and left. Alone in his study, Lorenzo poured a drink and thought about Leo, currently at school under triple the usual security. His son was finally adjusting back to normal life, had even started talking about joining the school art club. And now Vito was threatening to destroy that peace. The school charity event was held at the Lincoln Park Cultural Center, a fundraiser for the arts program. Leo had begged to participate, to help set up the student art display. After 2 weeks of exemplary behavior, Lorenzo had reluctantly agreed. "Papa, you don't need to send so many guards," Leo had complained that morning. "It's just school stuff. Humor me," Lorenzo had replied, ruffling his son's hair. "After last time, I need the peace of mind." What Lorenzo didn't know, what his intelligence network hadn't caught, was that Vito had been planning this for days, had paid off one of the event security guards, had studied the layout, had waited for exactly this opportunity. Leo was helping his art teacher arrange paintings in the main gallery when he noticed something odd. The guard by the side entrance, usually there were two, but now there was only one. And he was checking his phone instead of watching the room. Before Leo could process this, someone tapped his shoulder.
Leonardo Romano?
The man wore a catering uniform, smiled pleasantly. Your father asked me to bring you to him. Something about a surprise.
Leo est un crime de danger.
Papa never sent strangers. Papa always called first. Papa would never pull him away from a public event without Vincent, or one of his regular guards. I don't think so, Leo said, stepping back. The man's smile didn't waver, but his hand moved to his jacket. I really must insist. Leo did what Mara had taught him during those 3 days. He started screaming.
Help.
I don't know this man. Help. The room erupted into chaos. Teachers rushed over. The man in the catering uniform swore and ran for the side exit. Leo's actual guards converged from their positions, weapons drawn. But in the confusion, Leo saw something that made his blood run cold. 3 more men in catering uniforms, moving through the crowd toward him from different directions. This wasn't a single kidnapper. This was coordinated. Leo did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed his art teacher's phone from the table and ran, not for the exits where the fake caterers were positioned, but deeper into the building, toward the back rooms where the supplies were kept. His guards were shouting, trying to reach him, but the crowd was too thick, too panicked. Leo found a storage closet, locked himself inside, and with shaking hands, dialed the one number he'd memorized besides his father's. The number on the business card his father kept on his desk. The one he'd seen when he'd snuck in late at night. Mara's number, the one she'd given his father in case of emergency. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Hello? Mara? Leo's voice cracked. It's Leo. I need help. They're trying to take me again, and I don't know who to trust and…
Leo, slow down.
Where are you? Lincoln Park Cultural Center. There are men pretending to be caterers and my guards are out there, but I don't know if they can. Shouting outside the closet. Someone trying the door handle. I have to go, Leo whispered. If something happens to me, tell Papa I'm sorry. And tell him you were right about letting me paint. Leo, don't you dare. He hung up and turned off the phone, pressing himself into the corner of the dark closet. Outside, he heard a voice he didn't recognize. Check every room. The Don's brat is here somewhere. Mr. Morelli wants him alive, but that's the only restriction. Leo closed his eyes and thought about his father. About Mara. About the 3 days when he'd felt safe and normal. And he prayed that someone, anyone, would find him before Vito Morelli's men did. The door handle rattled again, more violently this time. Then everything went dark as someone cut the building's power. And in that darkness, Leonardo Romano, 10 years old, terrified, but his father's son, prepared to fight. Mara stared at her phone, Leo's panicked voice still echoing in her ears. Her hands shook as she grabbed her jacket and keys, her mind racing. Lincoln Park Cultural Center, that was at least 20 minutes away in traffic. She should call the police. She should stay out of it. This wasn't her problem anymore. Instead, she pulled out the business card she'd kept in her wallet and dialed Lorenzo Romano's number. He answered on the first ring. Ms. Jensen. Leo just called me. He's in trouble. Lincoln Park Cultural Center. Men are after him. He said they're pretending to be caterers. I know. We're already en route. His guards triggered the alarm 3 minutes ago. Lorenzo's voice was tight, controlled, but she could hear the fear underneath. Why did he call you? I don't know. He said he didn't know who to trust, and then he hung up. Ms. Jensen, I need you to stay where you are. This is now a security situation, and… He called me Mr. Romano.
Not you.
Not his guards.
Me.
That means something. Silence on the other end. Then, Where are you? Getting in my car. Don't. These aren't street thugs, Ms. Jensen. Vito Morelli is behind this. He's a rival faction leader who wants to prove I'm weak. He won't hesitate to use you if you show up. Then I guess you better get there first. Mara hung up, her heart pounding. She was halfway to her car when a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of her building. Vincent stepped out, his face grim. Get in. Boss's orders. I have my own. Now, Ms. Jensen. We don't have time to argue. Mara climbed in, and Vincent pulled away with the speed and precision of someone who'd done this before. 2 other vehicles followed behind them. What's happening? Mara demanded. Vito Morelli's making a play. He's trying to kidnap Leo to prove Lorenzo can't protect his own family. If he succeeds, Vincent's jaw clenched. It'll start a war. And the first casualty will be the peace Lorenzo's spent 15 years building. Why does Leo trust me? Vincent glanced at her. Because you're the only person in his life who wanted nothing from him. No favors, no protection, no connection to power. You just saw a scared kid and helped. Do you have any idea how rare that is in our world? Your world is insane.
Yeah.
But it's the one we've got. They arrived at the cultural center to find it surrounded by police cars, ambulances, and, less obviously, men in suits who were definitely not law enforcement. The building was dark, emergency lights flashing. Lorenzo stood near the entrance with a police commander, his posture rigid. When he saw Vincent's SUV, he immediately walked over. Ms. Jensen shouldn't be here, he said sharply to Vincent. Tell her that, Vincent replied. Mara stepped out of the vehicle. Leo called me for help. I'm here to help. This isn't your world. You don't understand what's at stake. You're right. I don't understand your world. I don't understand territory or power or whatever mob rules you play by. Mara moved closer, looking up at him. But I understand a scared 10-year-old boy. And right now, that's what matters. Lorenzo stared at her, something shifting in his expression. You don't know what Vito will do if he catches you with Leo. Then we make sure he doesn't catch us. Mara crossed her arms. Look, you can waste time arguing with me, or you can use the one advantage you have. Leo trusts me. If he's hiding, scared, he might not come out for your guards or the police. But he might come out for me. Vincent cleared his throat. She's not wrong, boss. Lorenzo looked between them, then at the darkened building where his son was hiding from trained killers. Every instinct told him to keep Mara away from this, to handle it with his people his way. But his son had called her. Not him. That truth cut deeper than any of Vito's betrayals. Fine, Lorenzo said. But you do exactly what I say when I say it.
No heroics, no arguments.
Understood. Understood. Lorenzo pulled out his phone, connecting to his security team inside. Status. We've cleared the main gallery and east wing. Found 3 of Morelli's men. Neutralized and contained. But we lost the boy in the chaos. Building's too big, too many rooms. He could be anywhere. Casualties. 2 of our guys injured, nothing critical. But boss? The kid's smart. He cut through the kitchen to the back storage areas. He's making them work for it. Despite everything, Lorenzo felt a flash of pride. Keep searching. And nobody fires unless fired upon. I won't have Leo traumatized more than necessary. He hung up and turned to Mara. The back storage area. That's where he's likely hiding. I need you to come with me and Vincent. If we find him, you'll be the one to call out to him. Your voice might be the only one he'll respond to. What about Morelli's men? Let me worry about them. They entered the building through a side entrance, Lorenzo leading with Vincent behind Mara. The emergency lights cast everything in an eerie red glow. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear shouting and heavy footsteps. How did this happen? Mara whispered. I thought Leo had security.
He did.
But Vito's been planning this for weeks. He bribed one guard, created a distraction, exploited the chaos. Lorenzo's voice was cold. He'll pay for it.
How?
Lorenzo didn't answer, and Mara wasn't sure she wanted him to. They moved through the building methodically, checking rooms. Each one was empty, and each empty room made Lorenzo's expression darker. Then they heard it, a crash, followed by a young voice shouting, "Get away from me."
Le.
Lorenzo took off running, Mara and Vincent right behind him. They burst into a large storage room filled with stage equipment and art supplies. Leo was backed into a corner, holding a paint can like a weapon. Two men in catering uniforms advanced on him slowly. "Leonardo, make this easy," one of them said. "We don't want to hurt you." "My father's going to kill you," Leo said, his voice shaking but defiant. "Your father's losing his grip. Time for new leadership." Lorenzo stepped into the room, his presence filling the space. Interesting theory. The two men spun around, reaching for weapons, but Vincent already had his gun trained on them. "Don't," Mr. Morelli said. "I don't care what Vito said." Lorenzo's voice could have frozen fire. "Put your weapons on the ground and step away from my son."
Now.
They hesitated, and in that moment, Mara saw what everyone feared about Lorenzo Romano. It wasn't violence or aggression. It was the absolute certainty in his eyes that he would win. That resistance was not just futile, but foolish. The men put their guns down. "Leo," Mara called softly. "It's okay, sweetie. Your dad's here." Leo's head snapped toward her voice. "Mara?"
"Yeah, kid.
"I'm here. You can come out now." Leo dropped the paint can and ran, not to his father first, but to Mara, wrapping his arms around her waist and sobbing into her shirt. She held him tight, stroking his hair. "You're okay," she murmured. "You're safe now." Over Leo's head, she met Lorenzo's eyes. The gratitude there was overwhelming, but so was something else, a recognition that his son needed more than he alone could provide. "Take him outside," Lorenzo said quietly. "Vincent will go with you." "What about you?" "I have business to finish with Vito Morelli."
Papa, no.
Leo pulled away from Mara. "Don't hurt him."
Please.
"That's what he wants. He wants you to be the monster everyone thinks you are." Lorenzo crouched down to his son's level. "What would you have me do?" "Be better than him. Show everyone that real strength is not giving them what they expect." Leo's eyes were red from crying, but clear with conviction. "Make him face consequences without becoming like him." Lorenzo looked at his 10-year-old son and saw his wife in those words. In that moral clarity, he'd been losing piece by piece over the years. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay. I'll do it your way." He pulled Leo into a tight embrace, then stood and nodded to Vincent. "Get them out of here."
And Vincent?
"Call the police commissioner. Tell him we have a gift for him. Evidence of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, attempted murder, and weapons trafficking. Let the law handle Vito Morelli." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that, boss?" "My son's right. It's time to be better than our enemies expect." As Mara led Leo toward the exit, the boy looked back at his father.
Thank you, Papa.
"For listening." "Thank you," Lorenzo replied, "for reminding me what I'm supposed to be protecting." Outside, in the safety of Vincent's SUV, Leo finally broke down completely. Mara held him while he cried, this brave, brilliant boy who'd survived 2 attempts to use him as a weapon against his father. "I was so scared," Leo whispered. "I know, but you were also incredibly brave. I knew you'd come if I called." "Always," Mara promised. And in that moment, she realized she meant it. Whatever came next, wherever this strange relationship with the Romano family led, she would be there for this child who'd somehow found his way into her heart. Even if it meant stepping into a world she didn't understand, facing dangers she couldn't imagine. Because that's what you did for family. And somewhere along the way, Leo had become exactly that. Lorenzo didn't come home until dawn. When he finally walked into the estate, still wearing his blood-free but wrinkled suit, Leo was waiting in the foyer, despite Mrs. Patricia's attempts to send him to bed. "Papa," Leo ran to him. Lorenzo caught his son, holding him close. "You should be sleeping." "I couldn't." "Not until I knew you were okay." Leo pulled back, studying his father's face. Did you hurt Mr. Morelli?"
No.
I kept my promise. Lorenzo sat on the bottom step of the grand staircase, pulling Leo down beside him. The police have Vito and 5 of his men on multiple charges. The evidence we provided, weapons trafficking, bribery, conspiracy, he'll be in prison for years. Maybe decades. Without you doing anything violent. Without me doing anything violent, Lorenzo smiled tiredly. Turns out, following the law can be just as effective as breaking it. Who knew? Leo laughed, then grew serious. Papa, I need to tell you something. When I was hiding, when I thought they might catch me, I was more scared of disappointing you than of them hurting me. That's not how it should be. Lorenzo felt the words like a punch to the chest.
Leo.
I know you love me. I know you're trying to protect me. But I can't live my whole life afraid. And you can't either. Leo took his father's hand. Mara told me something when I stayed with her. She said that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. She's a wise woman. She also said I should talk to you. Really talk. About what I want. What I need. Leo took a deep breath. I want to go to normal school, without guards following me into classrooms. I want to join the art club and maybe make a real friend. I want to walk to the corner store without 3 cars of security. And he paused. I want to see Mara again. She makes me feel like a regular kid. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Everything in him screamed to say no, to keep his son locked safely behind these walls. But he thought about the past 72 hours, the terror, the helplessness, the moment when Leo had called Mara instead of him. He was losing his son by trying too hard to keep him. I can't give you all of that immediately, Lorenzo said carefully. But I can try. We can start small, reduce security, more freedom, and he pulled out his phone. I think Ms. Jensen and I need to have a conversation about your future. Mara was working the morning shift at Eddie's diner when Lorenzo Romano walked in, causing every head in the place to turn. He looked absurdly out of place among the truckers and construction workers, his tailored suit probably worth more than the entire restaurant. Mr. Romano, Mara said, wiping her hands on her apron. This is a surprise. May I speak with you privately? I promise this won't take long. Eddie jerked his head toward the back office, and Mara led Lorenzo through the kitchen, where the line cooks stared openly into the cramped space that served as Eddie's headquarters. If this is about the debt you paid off, Mara started, I already tried to track down who did it to pay them back, but it was me. And it's not up for negotiation. Lorenzo held up a hand before she could protest. You saved my son twice now, Ms. Jensen. The debt is settled as far as I'm concerned. But that's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Because Leo asked to see you again. And because Lorenzo sat in Eddie's worn desk chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Because you've shown my son something I can't give him. Normalcy. The sense that he's valued for who he is, not whose son he is. Mara leaned against the desk. What are you asking me? I don't entirely know. Lorenzo ran a hand through his hair. Leo trusts you. In my world, trust is currency. And right now, you're the richest person in his life. I'm a waitress who lives in a 5th-floor walk-up. You're a woman who's shown my son kindness without expectation of reward. That makes you invaluable. Lorenzo met her eyes. I need your help, Ms. Jensen. Not as an employee, not as someone I'm paying off. As someone who genuinely cares about Leo's well-being. Help with what? With teaching him to be normal. With showing him that the world isn't all danger and calculation. He paused. With being a part of his life that isn't about my business or my reputation or any of the baggage that comes with being a Romano. Mara crossed her arms. You want me to what, babysit? I want you to be his friend.
His ally.
The person he can talk to when he can't talk to me. Lorenzo pulled out an envelope. This is an offer to manage a new restaurant I'm opening in your neighborhood. Family-friendly, community-focused. You'd have full control, a real salary, benefits. But the real job, the one I'm actually asking you to do, is to be there for Leo when he needs someone who sees him as just a boy. Mara stared at the envelope. You're offering me a restaurant to be friends with your son? I'm offering you a restaurant because you deserve better than double shifts for barely minimum wage. The friendship with Leo? That's already there. I'm just asking you not to walk away from it. This is insane.
Yes.
But then, so is everything about my life, Lorenzo stood. I'm not asking for an answer now.
Take time, think about it.
But, Ms. Jensen? Leo's been through 2 traumatic experiences in 3 weeks. He's seeing a therapist starting next week, but he specifically asked if you could be part of his support system. Not his guards, not his tutors, not the staff who've known him since birth. You. Mara felt her throat tighten. Why me? Because you're real. Because you don't fear me or worship me or want anything from me. Because when my son was lost and terrified, you gave him soup and a blanket and made him feel human. Lorenzo moved toward the door, then paused. Read the offer.
Think about it.
But know that whether you accept the restaurant or not, you'll always have a place in Leo's life if you want it. After he left, Mara opened the envelope. The salary listed made her dizzy. The terms were generous, almost absurdly so. But tucked inside was also a hand-drawn picture, Leo's careful sketch of the 2 of them feeding the stray cats, with "Thank you for being my friend," written in a child's careful handwriting at the bottom. That's what broke her. Eddie poked his head in. You okay? I think I just got offered my dream job for the weirdest reason possible. That Romano guy. Yeah. Eddie studied her face. You gonna take it? Mara looked at Leo's drawing, at his careful lettering, at the way he'd captured the exact moment when she'd felt most useful, most needed. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. Because somewhere between finding a shivering boy in an alley and holding him while he cried in an SUV, Mara Jensen had found something she'd been missing her entire life. Purpose. And maybe, just maybe, family. 2 days after Mara accepted Lorenzo's offer, everything fell apart again. She was at the new restaurant space, a beautiful corner building with large windows and exposed brick, reviewing renovation plans when Vincent called. Ms. Jensen, we have a situation. Mara's blood went cold.
Lao.
Missing. Taken from his therapist's office 20 minutes ago. We're trying to track him, but Vincent's voice was strained. Morelli had people on the outside. They grabbed Leo during the session transition. We think they're moving him out of the city. I thought Vito was in jail.
He is.
But his cousin Marcus isn't. And Marcus is more ruthless than Vito ever was. Where's Lorenzo? Mobilizing everyone. But Ms. Jensen, we need you. Leo has his panic button, a tracker we embedded in his watch. He activated it 5 minutes ago, but then it went dark. Last ping was at an abandoned textile factory in Gary, Indiana. That's 40 minutes from here. Why do you need me? Because if we storm in with armed men, they might panic and hurt him. But if someone non-threatening goes in first, someone Leo trusts, Vincent trailed off. Lorenzo won't ask you to do this. But I'm asking. That boy needs you. Mara's hands shook. I'm not trained for this. I don't know how to. You know how to be brave. That's enough, Vincent's voice softened. Please, Ms. Jensen. We'll be right there with you. We just need you to get to Leo first. Mara closed her eyes, seeing Leo's face in her mind, his trust, his hope, his belief that she'd always come when he called. Send me the address. The textile factory loomed against the gray sky, broken windows like missing teeth, rust bleeding down its corrugated metal walls. Lorenzo's convoy parked 2 blocks away, and he laid out the tactical approach to his team with Vincent. When Mara arrived in Vincent's car, Lorenzo's expression went from focused to furious. What is she doing here? I called her, Vincent said calmly. We need her. Absolutely not. This is too dangerous. Lorenzo, Mara stepped forward, using his first name for the first time. Leo trusts me. If there's any way I can help get him out safely, I have to try. You could be killed. Marcus Morelli isn't like his cousin. He has nothing to lose and no restraint. And Leo is a 10-year-old boy who's been kidnapped twice in 3 weeks. What do you think that's doing to him? Mara met his eyes. I'm not asking your permission. I'm telling you I'm going in. Lorenzo stared at her, and she watched the war playing across his face, the need to protect her fighting against the desperate need to save his son. "If you do this," he said finally, his voice rough, "you follow my instructions exactly. Vincent will be in your ear through a wire. At the first sign of danger, you get out. Understand?" "Understood." They outfitted her with a nearly invisible earpiece and a small camera disguised as a button. The plan was simple. Mara would approach the factory posing as someone lost, looking for directions. Once inside, she'd locate Leo and assess the situation while Lorenzo's team positioned themselves around the building. "Remember," Lorenzo said, his hand on her shoulder, "you're just there to find him and keep him calm. We'll handle the extraction." Mara nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. She approached the factory alone, her footsteps crunching on broken glass. The front entrance was chained, but a side door hung partially open. She pushed through, entering a vast space filled with rusted machinery and hanging chains. "Hello," she called out, trying to sound lost and harmless. "Is anyone here?" "My car broke down." A man emerged from behind a loom, gun visible at his hip. "Wrong place, lady. Turn around." "I'm sorry. I just need to use a phone." I said turn around. Then she heard it, a small voice from somewhere above. "Mara?" The guard's eyes narrowed. "You know the kid?"
Lao.
Mara called, abandoning the pretense. "Leo, are you okay?" "She's with Romano," the guard said into a radio. "We've got company." Everything happened at once. The guard reached for his weapon. Mara dove behind a machine. And Leo's voice rang out from the second floor. "Don't hurt her." "Target building now." Lorenzo's voice came through her earpiece, deadly calm. "Mara, stay down." But Mara was already moving, running toward the metal stairs leading to the second floor. She heard shouting behind her, the sound of doors crashing open, but all she cared about was reaching Leo. She found him in a small office, his hands zip-tied to a chair, his face bruised but his eyes fierce. A man stood behind him, Marcus Morelli, she assumed, with a gun pressed to the back of Leo's head. "Stay back," Marcus warned. "I will kill him." "No, you won't," Mara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Because then you have nothing to bargain with." "I don't need to bargain. I need to send a message." The window behind Marcus exploded inward. Lorenzo came through it like a force of nature, glass raining around him. He moved with brutal precision, disarming Marcus with 2 efficient strikes and putting him on the ground before the man could even process what was happening. "Don't move," Lorenzo said, his knee on Marcus's back, his voice arctic. "Don't even breathe wrong." Vincent and 2 other men poured through the door, securing the room. But Mara was already at Leo's side, cutting through the zip ties with a piece of broken glass, pulling him into her arms. "I've got you," she whispered. "You're safe. I've got you." Leo clung to her, sobbing. "You came. I knew you'd come." Lorenzo stood slowly, his eyes never leaving his son. When their team had Marcus secured, he moved to kneel beside Mara and Leo. "Leonardo," his voice cracked. Leo released Mara and threw himself at his father. Lorenzo caught him, standing and holding his son like he'd never let go. His composure finally shattered, and Mara watched tears stream down the face of Chicago's most powerful crime boss. "I'm sorry," Lorenzo whispered into Leo's hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better." "You did protect me, Papa. You sent Mara." Lorenzo looked at her over his son's head, and the gratitude in his eyes was overwhelming.
Yes.
"Yes, I did." Outside, as police and ambulances arrived, Lorenzo had called them before breaching, true to his word about doing things legally. Mara sat on the bumper of an ambulance while a paramedic checked her for injuries. Leo refused to leave her side, holding her hand while his own injuries were examined. The bruises were superficial. Marcus had been saving the real damage for when Lorenzo arrived. "Ms. Jensen." A detective approached, notepad ready. "We need your statement." Lorenzo stepped in smoothly. "She's been through enough today. Her statement can wait until tomorrow." The detective looked like he wanted to argue, saw Lorenzo's expression, and wisely chose not to. Vincent appeared with coffee for everyone. Marcus is talking already, trying to make a deal. Apparently, there are 6 more people involved in this. Good, Lorenzo said. Let him talk. Let him bury all of them. Leo tugged on Mara's sleeve. Can we go home now? Which home? Mara asked gently. Ours, Leo said simply, looking between her and his father. All of us together. Please. Mara looked at Lorenzo, who looked equally surprised and hopeful. I think, Lorenzo said slowly, that can be arranged. If Ms. Jensen is willing. Mara, she corrected. If we're going to be family, you should probably use my first name. Lorenzo smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Mara, then, would you like to come home with us? Just for tonight. To make sure Leo settles okay. It was an excuse, they both knew it. Leo would settle fine. But the boy needed them both, and maybe, just maybe, they were beginning to need each other too. Yes, Mara said. I'd like that. As they drove back to Chicago, Leo fell asleep between them in the back of Vincent's car, his head on Mara's shoulder, his hand clutching his father's. Thank you, Lorenzo said quietly, for being braver than any of my trained men. I wasn't brave. I was terrified. That's what makes it brave, he looked at his sleeping son. You've given me a gift I can never repay. You've shown me what unconditional love looks like.
No agenda, no fear, no calculation. Just.
Caring. He's easy to care about. Still. In my world, that's rare. You're rare, Mara Jensen. Mara looked out at the Chicago skyline appearing in the distance and thought about how much her life had changed in 3 weeks. She'd found a boy in an alley. And somehow, she'd found everything she'd been missing. The Romano Estates dining room had never felt more like home. Mara sat at the long mahogany table, Leo beside her working on a sketch, while Mrs. Patricia served breakfast. Lorenzo sat across from them, reading the morning paper with an expression of grim satisfaction. It's done, he said, folding the newspaper and sliding it across to Mara. The headline read, Morelli Crime Network dismantled, federal charges filed against 23 individuals. Marcus sang like a canary, Vincent said, walking in with his own coffee. Once he realized we had him on kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy, he gave up everyone. Bank accounts, weapons caches, dirty cops, the whole operation. And Vito? Mara asked. Federal prosecutors added new charges based on Marcus's testimony. He's looking at life without parole. Lorenzo's expression was neutral, but Mara caught the satisfaction in his eyes. All done legally, through the proper channels. No violence necessary. Leo looked up from his drawing. So it's really over? The immediate threat? Yes, Lorenzo reached across to squeeze his son's hand. Marcus's people are either arrested or scattered. The families who are listening to Vito's rhetoric have backed down. And the rest of the organization has been reminded why we do things my way. What way is that? Mara asked. Smart beats strong every time. Lorenzo smiled slightly. Vito wanted to prove I was weak because I wouldn't unleash violence. Instead, I proved that discipline and strategy are more powerful than any gun. What happens now? Mara asked.
Now.
Lorenzo leaned back. Now we rebuild. Not the organization that's stable, but our lives. Leo's life especially. Over the past week, since the factory rescue, Mara had been staying in one of the estate's guest rooms, just temporarily, though no one seemed in a hurry for her to leave. She'd watched Lorenzo transform from the fearsome Don everyone whispered about into something more human. A father trying to figure out how to balance protection with freedom. I've made some decisions, Lorenzo announced. Leo, you'll continue with your current therapist. Dr. Morrison says you're making good progress. But we're also reducing your security detail to 2 guards, and they'll maintain distance unless there's an active threat. Leo's eyes went wide. Really? Really? You were right. I can't keep you in a cage made of guards and fear. But you have to promise me something in return. Anything. You are the tracker watch at all times. You check in every 2 hours. And if you ever feel unsafe, you call immediately. No trying to handle it yourself.
I promise, Papa. Good.
Also, you're joining the school art club. I've already spoken to your teacher. She's thrilled. Leo jumped up and hugged his father. Thank you. Thank you. Mara watched the scene, her throat tight with emotion. This was what Leo had needed all along. Not absolute freedom, but trust. Boundaries that felt like protection rather than prison. And you? Lorenzo turned to Mara. The restaurant opens in 6 weeks. I've hired a full staff based on your specifications, and the contractors are ahead of schedule. Lorenzo, I still can't believe. Believe it. You've earned it. He pulled out another envelope. But there's something else. Leo and I discussed this, and we'd like to make you an official part of his support system. Not an employee, not a contractor, but he paused, searching for words. Family. Mara's vision blurred. What? Leo pulled a paper from his sketchbook. I drew this for you. It was a family portrait, Lorenzo, Leo, and Mara, standing together in front of the restaurant. Above it, in careful lettering, our family. You gave my son his heart back, Lorenzo said quietly. You showed him what it means to be cared for without conditions.
And you showed me, he swallowed hard.
You showed me that I was becoming the thing I'd spent my life trying not to be, a man ruled by fear instead of love. I just did what anyone would do. No, Vincent interjected from the doorway. Most people would have taken the reward and run. You stayed. You risked your life.
Twice.
That's not what anyone does. That's what family does. Mara looked around the table, at Leo's hopeful face, at Lorenzo's careful vulnerability, at Vincent's approving nod. These people had become her family without her even realizing it. Okay, she said softly.
Yes.
I'd be honored. Leo cheered and hugged her. Lorenzo smiled, that genuine smile that still transformed his face, and raised his coffee cup in a toast. To new beginnings, he said. To family, Mara added. To being normal, Leo chimed in, making them all laugh. Later that afternoon, Lorenzo found Mara in the estate's garden, where Leo was teaching her about the flowers his mother had planted years ago. May I borrow you for a moment? Lorenzo asked. They walked along the stone path, away from Leo's earshot. There's something you should know, Lorenzo said. The people in my organization, they respect strength, but they respect honor more. What you did, walking into that factory unarmed to save my son. Word spread. You're being talked about as the woman who proved courage doesn't require violence. I don't want to be talked about in your world. Too late. You're already part of it. He stopped walking, turning to face her. But here's what that means practically. You're under my protection now. Anyone who threatens you threatens me. You'll never have to fear debt collectors, landlords, or anyone else again. Not because I'm paying your way, but because you're family. And we protect family. Lorenzo, I don't want your money. I know, but you're getting my protection anyway. Non-negotiable, his expression softened. Mara, you walked into a building full of armed men to save my son. You think I'm going to let anything happen to you now? Not a chance. Is this how your world works? Everything's about debts and protection? Usually, yes. But with you? Lorenzo shook his head. With you, it's simpler. You matter to Leo. Therefore, you matter to me. No debt, no transaction. Just gratitude. Mara studied his face, seeing the man behind the reputation. Your wife would have liked you like this. This version of you. Lorenzo's eyes grew distant. Sophia always said I was two people, the man I was with her and Leo, and the man I had to be for everyone else. She begged me not to let the second one consume the first. And did you? Let it consume you. Almost. Until a waitress found my son in an alley and reminded me what really matters, he smiled slightly. Sophia would have liked you. She always believed in the goodness of people, even when I couldn't. They walked back toward Leo, who was now drawing the garden with intense concentration. Look, Papa. I'm capturing the light through the trees, like Mama taught me. Lorenzo knelt beside his son, genuinely studying the work. It's beautiful, Leonardo. Your mother would be proud. I think she'd be proud of you too, Leo said seriously. You beat the bad guys without becoming one. That's what real power looks like, right? Lorenzo pulled his son close.
Yes.
That's exactly what it looks like. Mara watched them together and felt something shift in her chest, a sense of belonging she'd never experienced. She'd spent her whole life on the outside, watching other people's families through windows, imagining what it felt like to truly matter to someone. Now she knew. And it was worth every terrifying moment that had brought her here. Mara, Leo called. Come see. I'm going to paint this as a gift for your restaurant. She joined them in the garden, and as the three of them discussed colors and perspective, Vincent watched from the terrace with a satisfied smile. The Romano family had been broken, fractured by fear and loss. But somehow, a poor waitress with a kind heart had helped them find their way back together. And in doing so, she'd found her own place to belong. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the large windows of Mara's kitchen, though the sign outside read Sophia's Table in elegant script, a name Leo had suggested to honor his mother's memory. Mara stood behind the counter, watching as families filled the cozy space. The exposed brick walls displayed Leo's artwork, paintings of the city, the garden, the stray cats they still fed together. In the corner, a small area was designated for children to draw while their parents ate, free art supplies available to anyone who wanted them. Miss Mara, a little girl ran up, clutching a drawing. Look what I made. Mara crouched down, admiring the crayon masterpiece. That's beautiful, Sophia. Your mom's going to love it. She'd named the children's corner after Leo's mother too, a small memorial to a woman she'd never met but felt connected to through the boy they both loved. The door chimed, and Leo walked in, now several inches taller and carrying a backpack covered in paint stains. His security detail, reduced to one guard who stayed outside, gave Mara a friendly wave through the window. How is art club? Mara asked, already preparing his usual, hot chocolate and a grilled cheese. Amazing! Mr. Peterson said my piece might be selected for the City Youth Exhibition. Leo climbed onto his favorite stool at the counter. And Marcus, my friend Marcus from class, he wants to come over this weekend. Papa already approved it. Mara smiled. The fact that Leo could casually mention having a friend over, that Lorenzo had learned to let people into their lives, felt like a miracle. That's wonderful, kiddo. His parents were nervous at first, Leo admitted. But Papa invited them for dinner last month, and now they're okay. Papa said he showed them he was just a businessman who cares deeply about community improvement, Leo grinned. Which is technically true. Very technically, Mara laughed. The past 6 months had been transformative. Lorenzo had gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations, delegating more to Vincent and other trusted lieutenants. He'd attended every one of Leo's art shows, school conferences, and therapy sessions. He'd learned to let his son breathe, while still keeping him safe. And he'd become something Mara never expected, a friend. As if summoned by her thoughts, Lorenzo walked through the door, looking far more relaxed than the man she'd first met. He wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of his usual suits, and he smiled, really smiled, when he saw them. Two of my favorite people, he said, settling onto the stool beside Leo. Though I suspect I'm interrupting our talk. Just telling Mara about the exhibition. Can she come? Please. I wouldn't dream of going without her. Lorenzo caught Mara's eye. You're coming, right? Wouldn't miss it. A woman approached their table, Mrs. Chun from Mara's old building, who'd become a regular. Mara, dear, this stew is perfection. What's your secret? Love and patience, Mara replied, the same answer her foster mother used to give. That's all it takes. After Mrs. Chun left, Lorenzo said quietly, You've built something special here. It's not just a restaurant, it's a community center. Look around. Mara did. In one corner, elderly regulars played chess. Near the window, a young mother nursed her baby, while her toddler colored. At the large communal table, a book club was meeting. And everywhere, people were talking, laughing, connecting. We serve 50 free meals a day to anyone who needs them, Mara said. No questions asked. Thanks to your endowment. Our endowment, Lorenzo corrected. This place belongs to all of us. You just make it work. Leo tugged his father's sleeve. Papa, tell her about the thing. What thing? Mara asked suspiciously. Lorenzo pulled out an envelope, a gesture that had become familiar over the months. Don't panic. It's not money this time. Then what is it? Adoption papers. Preliminary forms. Lorenzo's expression turned serious. Leo and I have been discussing this with Dr. Morrison. We'd like, if you're willing, to make this official. Not employment, not obligation, but legal family. Mara stared at the envelope, her hands trembling. You want to adopt me? Technically, it's more complicated than that since you're an adult, Lorenzo explained. But legally, we want you designated as Leo's guardian, co-parent, essentially. In case anything happens to me, in case Leo needs you, it would be official. You'd have rights, protections, legal standing. But more importantly, Leo added, his voice serious beyond his years, it means you're really my family. Not just Papa's friend or my friend, but my family. Like a mom, if that's okay. Mara's vision blurred with tears. Leo, You don't have to answer now, Lorenzo said quickly. This is huge, and we understand if you need time. Yes, the word came out choked. Yes, of course, yes. Leo launched himself at her, nearly knocking her off the stool. She caught him, holding tight while tears streamed down her face. Over his shoulder, she saw Lorenzo wipe his own eyes quickly. Thank you, Lorenzo mouthed. Later, after the dinner rush died down and Leo was doing homework in the back office, Lorenzo helped Mara clean tables, something he'd started doing regularly, claiming it helped him think. You know, he said, wiping down the counter, when Leo disappeared that first time, I thought my world was ending. Everything I'd built, everything I'd protected, none of it mattered if I couldn't keep him safe. But you did keep him safe.
No.
You did. You found a lost boy in the cold and showed him what kindness looked like. What family could be. Lorenzo paused, meeting her eyes. You didn't just save his life, Mara. You saved mine too. You reminded me what I was supposed to be protecting, not territory or reputation, but love, connection, the things that actually matter. I think we saved each other, Mara said softly. I was lost too, in my own way. Working double shifts, surviving but not living. Then I found Leo, and suddenly, she gestured around the restaurant. Suddenly, I had purpose. Family. A reason to be brave.
Papa.
Mara, Leo called from the office. Come see. I finished the painting for the exhibition. They walked together to the back, where Leo had unveiled his masterpiece, a large canvas showing a woman and a boy feeding cats in an alley, city lights twinkling above them. It was beautiful, capturing not just the scene but the emotion, the moment when two lost souls had found each other. The title, painted in small letters at the bottom, read, The Night Everything Changed. It's perfect, Mara whispered. It's us, Leo said simply. The beginning of our family. Lorenzo wrapped an arm around both of them, and they stood there in the small office of a community restaurant, three people who'd found each other through chance and chaos and choice. A crime boss learning to be a father first. A lonely boy learning he could be loved for himself. A poor waitress who discovered that family wasn't about blood or money or status. It was about showing up, being brave, and choosing to care. You know what I realized? Leo said, still staring at his painting. I ran away because everyone was afraid of Papa. But you never were, Mara. Not really. Oh, I was terrified, Mara admitted. But you came anyway.
You helped anyway.
That's what made the difference. Leo looked up at her. You showed me that love is bigger than fear. Mara pulled him close, meeting Lorenzo's eyes over his head. The gratitude there had transformed into something deeper, respect, trust, and genuine affection. Thank you, Lorenzo said again, for finding my son in that alley, for taking him home, for becoming part of our lives. Thank you for letting me, Mara replied. for trusting me with something precious. Always, Lorenzo promised. As they locked up the restaurant that night, walking together toward Lorenzo's car with Leo between them, Mara looked back at the warm lights of Sophia's table. Through the windows, she could see the community space she'd built, the walls covered in children's art, the tables that had hosted so many connections. She'd found a shivering boy in an alley 6 months ago, unaware he was a mafia boss's son. But what she'd really found was herself, her courage, her purpose, her family. And as they drove home together, Leo chattering about his exhibition while Lorenzo smiled and Mara listened, she realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unlikely packages, like a lost child in a cold alley, a dangerous man learning to love openly, and a waitress discovering she'd been searching for family her whole life. She'd just found him in the cold. And in saving him, she'd found her purpose too.
The end.